Well, let's go ahead and jump into it then. Greetings, everybody, and thank you so much for joining this meeting of the State Water Resources Control Board's second statewide agricultural expert panel working group meeting. I believe this is maybe the 10th or 11th meeting on January 21st, 2026. Really appreciate you all joining this afternoon. Before we jump into a very quick review of our agenda, I want to hand it over first to Chief Deputy Director Karen Mogus from the State Water Resources Control Board, and then over to the expert panel chair, Dr. Daniel Geisler, for opening remarks. Karen.
I'll keep it brief. Nice to see you all again. Looking forward to more good discussion today, and wanted to reiterate I'm hearing a lot of good feedback from all walks of interested parties in this process, that this is really a great process, and you all are doing a really good job of deliberating on our questions. So thank you. And again, look forward to more discussion today.
Thanks, Karen. Daniel, any opening remarks?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks again for joining us today, and thanks for Sam and the Water Board team for organizing today's meeting. Back to you.
Thanks so much. And just one note, particularly for our panelists, there is an updated version of the full expert panel report. I emailed it out at noon today, but apparently I'm having some email attachment issues. That document has been uploaded to the public FTP site, and I emailed it to all of you individually as well. I apologize for the delay in working as fast as possible with our Sac State IT team to get the issue fixed. But maybe I can just get a thumbs up or a show of hands from our individual panelists. Did you receive the report in the most recent email that I sent you? Thumbs up from Molly. Wonderful. And a hand up I see from staff in Sacramento.
We're going to drop the document in the chat as well.
Wonderful. Thanks. Great. And other panelists, if you didn't receive the document, just let us know in the chat. You can either direct message me, or you can just open it up in the chat that Kelsey just posted as well. All right, so let's take a look at our agenda. This should look extremely familiar at this point. We've been using the same agenda for most of these meetings. The purpose of these working group sessions is to facilitate the expert panel's deliberations on issues relevant to the panel charge questions. And most importantly, at this point, taking a look at the full draft expert panel report as well. So we're going to spend the bulk of the time looking at that draft document, and Daniel has done a fabulous job leading the discussion of the draft report. So look forward to that. And I know that the public agenda mentioned that presentations would start around 5. At the request of the panel chair, we're bumping that back just a little bit to 5:15 for presentation and discussion with invited speakers. That'll give the panel a little bit more time to discuss the draft report. And we only have one invited speaker today, Stephanie Cortman from CSU Monterey Bay, to discuss N-gaseous losses from specialty crops. So look forward to Stephanie's presentation when she comes on around 5:15 or so. At about 5:40, maybe a few minutes before that, we'll transition to public comment. And I know we received a few requests for public comment, including one brief series of images that I'll put up on the screen at their request to support their comment. It's our goal, as always, to get you out of here as close to 6 p.m. as possible. But with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Daniel. And I'm happy to pull the document up on my end too, Daniel. Just let me know what you would like to do.
Thank you very much. If possible, I would like to share it from my computer, if I'm allowed to do so.
Yes, you should be able to.
Okay. No, just a second.
No problem.
Okay, can you see it? Is it shared?
Yes, and I just want to make sure that this is version 4 that was posted to the FTP and sent out to all of the panelists.
Yes, I
Wonderful.
renamed it because otherwise I will not find it anymore. So I have my own system of naming things.
Okay. Thank you.
But I have to say, I received this document about 10 or 15 minutes ago, so I really didn't have any time to prepare for today's meeting. And there are a lot of comments. Many of them are small comments about the wording, and that's probably something I should just need to have a look at after the meeting and incorporate your suggestions. So I would like to ask other panel members, are there important things you discovered in the document you think we need to discuss and make changes as a team? Hannah?
Thanks, Daniel. I think, well, I'll get to the research section 5.2 later, but I think the only thing was the confusion, at least in question 1, excuse me, around A over R being written, or sorry, being examined in context with the limits or targets. I think there's a speaker, someone who gave comment, and I reread that question through the lens of having that speaker's comment in my head. And yeah, it seems like with the A over R in question 1, we might want to get rid of that. I think it's a useful metric when comparing farmers to farmers, but when we're thinking about the context of targets and limits, I don't think it's appropriate.
Do you know by chance where that section is you would like to?
Yeah, so line 438, although it looks like, I'm not sure if my edits were incorporated.
All edits have been incorporated, but others had edits as well. So the line numbers have likely changed from the document that you were working on, Hannah.
Okay,
So what I don't quite understand, I mean, if we talk about targets and limits, that would be target and limits on A minus R, most likely. So
right. So
I think I don't fully understand your comment, and unfortunately, I
So-
can find it so quickly.
oh wait, that's not, wait, what am I looking at? Well, in my version, or the version 4 that I downloaded, under question 1A, on the document I have, it's line 438, but I don't know. Yeah, so right there, I guess it's 435 on yours.
This section here.
Yeah, just having the A over, like, targets and limits may refer to metrics that quantify potential nitrate loading to groundwater, including A minus R, A over R, or A. To me, that seems confusing.
So there are 3 options given: A minus R, A over R, and A.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these 3 metrics could be used to set targets and limits.
Yeah, and I think A over R just doesn't make sense in that regard. Because it's not, it's an efficiency metric, not a, it can't really tell you about loading.
No, definitely not loading. Aha. So should potential nitrate loading or efficiency, would it make sense then?
I mean, I guess, if we're setting a limit based on A over R, and you have a grower who has, I don't know, an A over R of 2, that could that could represent very, very high loading or very, very low loading, depending on what the A or R are. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes, I agree. The reason why I would like to keep A over R here, because that was the metric proposed by the first expert panel. The first
know, and
expert panel did not talk about A minus R.
Yeah.
But probably others have other opinions. And
Yeah. I guess I would just disagree with that
yeah.
Yeah, but I would, yeah. And also
Okay.
it doesn't look like my edits were or comments were transferred, unfortunately.
But I added this comment here, so that's probably something we can discuss later. Richard, you had a comment?
Well, at the end of the last meeting, we said, "Oh, okay, we finished question 1. Then we can move on." I don't think we're done with question 1. I think we have to go back. I think you kind of can see that from all the edits that came in.
Yes.
So I was just mentioning that.
Thanks. Ngudu?
Danny, I just wanted to ask if you could increase the text size for what you're sharing.
Does that look like better? Is it better?
It's still on 100.
If I increase it more, we won't see the comments anymore, at least not on my screen.
I see.
That's a problem. That's kind of the maximum. Otherwise, I won't see. No.
That's fine. It's fine. I can also look at
Otherwise,
on my end.
probably also have a look at the document that was placed in the chat. Then you can have a look at that too. It should be the same, although
Yeah.
apparently the line numbers are different, but I don't know why.
No, that's fine. And then I just want to respond to Hannah's comment. I think I agree that we have mostly discussed A minus R, and then R for regions that don't have R, A for regions that don't have R. So it would be helpful to maybe stick to those two, since that has sort of been the main points we've discussed. We haven't talked much about A over R as a metric through our panel discussions.
Yeah. Okay, I said then we probably should remove it from here. Then Thomas, you had a comment? Thank
Sorry,
you.
one comment, Daniel. I think
Sorry.
based
Didn't wanna cut
based
you
on
off.
my feedback regarding sharing, we can now see some other parts of your screen. So maybe you can reshare your screen. I don't know, I'm the only one seeing this. I'm seeing like faces twice.
Let me stop sharing.
While you're doing that, Daniel, my apologies, and particular apologies to Hannah. As I mentioned, dealing with some tech issues, and she had 3 comments on question 1 that didn't transfer over to the document. That's open on the screen. The edits to the text all did. But Hannah, let me know if you'd like me to read through the comments that you provided specific to the response to question 1. I'm happy to do that if it's useful.
Okay.
I have your version open. Thank you.
Thank you.
How does it look like now in Ngudu?
It says started sharing. Can't see the screen yet.
You can't see it yet?
No. Is anyone else able to see Daniel's? Okay. Yeah.
You can't?
No.
Officially, I'm sharing, but I don't see the preview, so I don't know what the problem is. Sam, do you want to try and share your screen?
Yes, I'm happy to. Let me just pull up the correct version. And just let me know. Hopefully folks can see that.
I can see it, yes.
Okay. And let me know which section you'd like me to go to.
Thomas, you raised your hand.
Yes, I did, and now I can actually activate my microphone. Great, awesome, thank you. I on following up on Ngodu and Hannah's discussion of these metrics, I agree with everything that has been said. I don't mind leaving it the way it is because I can see different regions using different metrics for different purposes. I think ultimately we're interested in the A-R metric to the degree that we're looking at groundwater impacts, because the A-R ultimately is the one that most closely sort of represents that impact. But in terms of how you get growers to comply, there is different pathways as we have discussed in past meetings, and these pathways may involve they may involve A over R as sort of a peer-to-peer, a metric that measures peer-to-peer comparison for the same crop, and may be useful for either a target or a limit on specific crops. So I would not want to necessarily constrain the group of metrics that are available to regional water boards. I can see any one of these metrics being useful for any, for a variety of purposes. So that would be I would be comfortable leaving it the way it is. Another piece, if we're discussing question 1, I was going to suggest is that we move the entire overview and background actually into the response to that first set of questions rather than keeping it separate. I don't really see much of a difference between what's in the background section and what we're discussing in the question. I can see it all just being in that question.
I can have a look at it and move it, yes. Other comments, Thomas?
There was a part that number 8. You can delete that. I have that in chapter 6. And instead, on number 2, you might want to just refer to chapter 6 for more details. Just at the end of that paragraph 2.
Which one are you talking about?
In the first set of response and recommendations. So it's in line 446. Yeah. So at the end of that paragraph, you can just in parentheses see chapter 6.
Yeah.
And then number 8 was in line 460.
Yes, I only copied it, so you think we could delete it here? It will be enough
exactly.
to have it.
Delete that 504. Yeah, delete that.
Okay.
Cool. That was that for now.
Thank you. Hannah, you have a comment?
Yeah, I think I hear what Thomas is saying. There's a line in question, I think, in the response to question, I think, can't remember at this point, but maybe 5, that's like A-R is, is the relevant metric for loading, it makes that distinction that we're talking about. And I wonder if we
Yeah.
just move it up to question 1.
Mhm.
Or have a similarly worded distinction in question 1.
Is it possible you're talking about question 4?
It could be. Yep. I can't remember what's what, what number is what.
But I can find it and either move it up or copy it so that we make the same distinction.
Yeah, it
depending
is
on
A.
whether it's
Sorry.
going to.
It is 4. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll do that. Thank you. Ali?
Just, I agree we should keep it in page 12, that sentence at the same, what it is, I think is correct. If you look at what that sentence says, because we also even think, A can be a metric for target and limit sometimes for some specific area. I think all those A minus R or A ratio to R or A can be metric for target and limit. I think the sentence is correct. We don't need to change it. In page 12, yeah.
Yes. The only thing we need to change, probably Mike added a sentence saying that quantify potential nitrate loading. So that for A over R, that's not really nitrate loading. So, but I can add some distinction there to make that clear. Or as Hannah suggested, move or copy some of the response for question 4 to clarify that point. Thank you. Ngudu?
I had a comment on, I think it's 509 there on anonymous data. I think also Michael added a comment there. And the comment was if we could maybe take out part of the beginning one of that sentence, anonymous data transparency could help. And then I suggested some text below for a revision for that. And the reason is primarily what Michael wrote, where we haven't agreed as a panel. Maybe we can discuss that if anonymous data is good or a bad approach, given that it's being done differently in the Central Valley versus the Central Coast. And I don't know if this is particularly in response to the answer to 1A. So I suggested some revised language there to cover that. And I know we have I think part of this language, you moved it, Daniel, to maybe question 4 on anonymous data, or one of the questions further down.
Question 5, yes, where we talk about the information needed. So how would you propose to change the sentence, or what would you add here for point 9?
Yeah, if you're looking to the comments that Sam wrote, my proposal was to say each region should develop their own data privacy and transparency models without commenting on if data transparency could help or what is a better approach.
So
and then we can talk more about that in question 5.
Each region should develop their own data privacy and transparency models. I added it. You can see it on the version Sam is sharing, but I added it to the version I'm working on, so I will make that change. Thank you. Ali?
Well, that comment, I think, came from Gudu, but I'm not sure I agree with that. Actually, that's privacy or not. And if it's bad or good, it should be the entire state the same. We should not let the region decide on that in the privacy. It is good or bad, it is not really region based to decide to open that data to the public or not. I think we should go with a very specific comment instead of just giving that authority to the region, I think.
But we already have differences across regions, at least between the Central Coast and the Central Valley.
I know.
It's probably already a fact that there are regional differences, and proposing that one region should adopt the model of the other would not be possible, probably.
Right, but if it's bad or good, should be for the entire state. Doesn't make sense that much to me. A region needs transparency, the other region not, or it can hurt some growth in one region, not in the other region. I don't know. I think that's the question.
Mm-hmm. What do others think? Would it make sense to have a state or have the same approach in every single region, given the fact that it is already different right now? Ngudu?
Yeah, I can quickly respond. I think we definitely should provide recommendations on that. There should be some transparency. At least that's my opinion on the data. We've heard Eric Poss and some of the team from UCNR. Just the public has shared a lot of concerns with the privacy. So I do think there should be transparency with the data, but I don't think we should go into depth in question 1 here, 1A. So that in-depth information should be in question 5, was sort of what I was trying to share. And just, I guess, Daniel, regarding your question, that data can be made public just the same way it's being done on the Central Coast. So that would be my recommendation for this anonymous data concern.
Mm-hmm. Thomas, you had a comment too?
I'm just looking for, yeah. Sam, if you could go to page, where did I have this? Page 66. I think, is that where I had it? I'm not sure now.
Which section are you
I
looking for?
am, I'm in chapter 6. I thought it was in there. You know what? Let me step back for a minute and I'll raise my hand again and come back to you. I'll find it because I wanted to make a specific comment and following up on Ngodu's comment. Give me a minute here and maybe somebody else wants to go and say something.
Mm-hmm. Anybody has a comment?
Okay, there we go.
You found it, Thomas.
I found it, yes. So it is on page 67 in chapter 6.5. So if you scroll down to 6.5, Sam.
So is this in the revised text that you provided?
Yeah, it's in chapter 4, in version 4.
Okay, right here.
6.5. I think that may be page 73 now.
Okay.
But just scroll down, Sam.
Yeah, if you scroll down to about the towards the end of section 6.5. And just FYI, I basically rewrote that modeling section based on the information we had and completely restructured it. So we cut out the old section 6 and put in a new section 6.
Yes, I
I'm not
just
seeing
copied
you.
everything there, but
Yeah.
unedited nothing. So yes, it definitely needed to work. So
Yeah.
thanks a lot for doing that.
Yeah. Sam, I'm not seeing you scrolling down. Is that frozen?
No, that's the extent of the text that you provided, Thomas. The final
I see. Do I not
Our
look?
screen, Sam, we see 6.1 on top of the screen.
6.5.
No,
And
it's not
line
showing.
2532, that's what we see.
Ah,
that
yeah,
help?
Now.
yeah.
There
And
we
then
go.
scroll down, next page. A little bit more. Yeah, there we go. So
Sorry about
in
that.
here, and this is going back to Ngudu's comment and Ali's comment. I also think both we should give regions some leeway in terms of how they want to do that. But we can also make recommendations on sort of minimum standards. And what I wrote here, this is copied from a piece that I had originally suggested to be included in question 1 is if you go up 2 more lines or 1 more line, Sam, yeah, perfect. In regions where soil crop models like SWAT are used, the panel recommends that the following additional variables are reported. Modeled annual nitrogen budget information with separate columns for the average, the 5th, the 10th, the 25th, the 50th, 75th, 90th, and 95th percentiles of N applied, N from atmospheric deposition, N from fixation, nitrogen removed, nitrogen added, nitrogen in runoff, nitrogen added to permanent crops, nitrogen subject to atmospheric losses, and changes in soil organic matter content. So these are basic outputs from this, for example, CV SWAT, and having essentially these percentiles would describe the distribution of these. And this would be, I should add here that this would be basically by crop. So we have these data basically for each crop, and the variability within each crop would basically then be because of how different growers, and how their management is different, and how their soils are different, and how the climate might be different from location to location, all of which is reflected in CV SWAT. This would be great information to have in general. This is information that I've been able to work with the CV SWAT folks with, so we can update our own groundwater nitrogen loading model. And I think this would be a good template for reporting outputs from these soil water crop models when they're used to set targets. So I'll have to make a change and make sure that this is specifically crop specific, and it may say so in the next paragraph.
I made a note too, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can add
Cool.
that, and then you can check.
And I think that, I think the other discussion that we may want to have is, whether there's been a number of presentations that say there should be no anonymity at all, or it's, to the degree to which there is anonymity. I'm still not quite sure I understand that, and how there is one layer of anonymity in the Central Coast. It seems like all of the data are there at least by farm. In the Central Valley, all the data are available by field without pointing to an exact location, but the data are essentially all there. I'm comfortable with the level of reporting that is done in either region. There was one more suggestion that I'm not sure in which question it ended up, which was that there was a request to identify the size of individual fields. And one proposal was to the degree that that may be may make coalitions uncomfortable or growers uncomfortable because the specific size would essentially then reveal which field it is within a township, that they at least be put into some categories in terms of size. 5 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 200, 200 to 500, or something like that. And we could discuss that as well. I don't know what you all think about that.
I think it is important to include some measure of the size for individual fields, because of course, if you just know the number of fields, if the biggest field makes a change, it has a big effect more than when 10 really small fields make progress. So the size definitely needs to be reported, but I'm fine with a category that is fine enough so that over an entire region, the change in nitrate loading, for example, could be.
And
somebody from the public who wants to do that.
On this particular paragraph in line 2800, we could add that these are percentiles by area, as opposed to percentiles among fields, number of fields or number of reports. So it would be essentially an area weighted percentile.
Yeah. I made that note too.
All right, that's it from me.
Thank you. Hannah, you have a comment, suggestion?
Yeah, I agree with Thomas. I think that there should be some leeway within the regions for them to determine the anonymization of data. I think, and I think I can't remember who worked on question 5. It might have been Thomas and Ali. But I think that spelled out really nicely in question 5. I like the sort of bins, and as long as concerned parties can determine the information that they want in terms of how groundwater is being impacted, I think that's the way I would vote to move forward.
Thank you. Other comments to this topic? If not, I also made a suggestion to question 5. Sam, could you show page 31, somewhere around line 1219? It is not yeah. Yes, so this is question 5 by Thomas and Ali, and my suggestion here was to delete this table because with the information given, it's really hard to understand what it actually means. There are no units, there's no description of scenario 1 and 2. So I was wondering if it's very important whether you could add a sentence or 2 describing what they found, Ransom et al. 2018. But my impression is this table, readers would have to go to the paper to understand what it actually means. So Thomas and Ali, what is your opinion? Does it need to be here, or can we replace it with something shorter that may make sense for people who do not want to read the scientific paper?
Yeah, let me take, this is a good comment and good feedback to have. Let me take another look at this and either edit the text and or move it into the modeling section.
Yes. But if the table is included, then it would need a little bit more background, because it really wasn't clear to me what it means. not even the units and the two scenarios. So I
Yeah.
think a little bit more background should be provided. If you want to keep it, that would be great.
I will make a note here to tackle that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, other comments about specific sections? Richard?
So, are we talking about specific sections, or are we going to just go start at the beginning and just grind through this?
We can go up to the beginning and go through, yes. If a specific.
Well, yeah. I mean, I put in some wording in question 1 that I just wanted to make sure everybody was okay with.
Which part of question 1 is it?
Question 1A, bullet 6.
Sam, could you move to page 13, line 473 or so? Yes, is that the section, Richard?
Yes. There was some feedback from public feedback the last session, and so I just kind of changed it a little bit to make it more clear, you know, exactly what was being proposed. And I don't know, do you want me to read it, or do people want to read it and just see if they agree?
Go ahead and read it. No.
Yeah, please read it.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, it's referring to you know, a little bit to question 5. It says, in addition, targets may be set to reduce nitrate discharge to levels closer to the operational benchmark that protects groundwater quality. The targets need to be set based on levels that are achievable by growers that will lead to improved water quality. Focus research and consultation with UC farm advisors and specialists and technical assistance providers can be used to help determine agronomic feasibility of proposed targets. Once a target has been established, an iterative process can be established by the Regional Water Quality Control Board, for instance, 3 to 5 years. So I just put, you know, I didn't have in there, you know, that this is be the work of the Regional Water Quality Control Board. So just to clarify that, to determine if the industry, while making a concerted effort to utilize BMPs, can meet the target. After the initial period, the process can be evaluated to determine why or why not growers were able to meet the target. The evaluation process should consider environmental, socioeconomic, you know, tenure, market requirements, and agronomic considerations for achieving the target. If growers can comply with the first target, the Regional Water Quality Control Board can then establish a new target, and the iterative process can be repeated. The goal is to move the agricultural industry in a reasonable fashion over time, closer to the operational benchmark. This process is similar to the process presented in Ag Order 4.0 by the Central Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board, and it gives us some details about where that's found. And then, got to go to the next page there, Sam. And that procedure is supported here with the addition of the evaluation period with each step down to determine if the proposed limit is achievable by the industry. This approach is similar to the approach used in Region 5, where targets are reviewed and updated every 5 years. The ultimate goal for the industry is to achieve the nitrate load that is protective of water quality as close as agronomically feasible to the operational benchmark. Anyway, it's just some wordsmithing, but just a little bit of clarification.
It sounds good to me. the one thing I just noticed on line 483, I think, Sam, if you could scroll up a bit. 483, you deleted data availability. I can't remember what the reason was, but somebody suggested to include that, or we included that later.
Yeah, well,
Ruth, did you suggest including it? I can't remember why we included it, but there was a reason.
yeah, I couldn't remember it either, so I thought, well, I couldn't make
But
sense
so
out of it
probably
either.
keep it. Somebody may remember.
Yeah, somebody's
But
gonna have
other
to
than that,
advocate.
from my point of view, it looks good. Yeah, or
Yeah.
it is clear.
Yeah. No, if somebody has something to say about that, please speak. This is your chance to speak up because I thought about it for a lot and I couldn't figure it out, so I took it out.
Ngudu, do you remember why it is in there, or do you have a different comment?
I have a different comment. I think this is great, Richard. So thank you for going back. Just thank you to you and Hannah for going back to this question so many times to reward it. I guess my only comment is through this iterative process, at some point there needs to be limits. We don't have to set those limits as a panel because we don't know what that answer is for each region. But that is a line that I would add there, where people go through this evaluation process and iterative process. And if the regional water board is not saying change, then there should be a limit put in place, something enforceable, because otherwise the process would just continue being iterative without any change. But I think this is really supported by all the best management practices where if people are working towards that, then we should see change. But I would add a line there saying that at some point there should be a limit in as part of this iterative process if a region is not seeing those changes. Because really the question is about limits, this question 1A. But I think generally the language looks great.
Yeah. Okay. Let Hannah and I think about that and we'll work on that. I think kind of from my perspective, the thing that I'm hopeful is that, and that's why I put in there about what did I say? Concerted effort to utilize BMPs. This is on the growers to use the best practices that are out there and do it earnestly and see if they can meet these targets. I don't want to come at them with a stick at this point during this this iterative process, but like you're saying, maybe at some point once you're past that, maybe then those targets can be. And in Ag Order 4.0, they kind of had that kind of an approach, actually. They started off with targets and then they went to limits. So you're making a good point. So let Hannah and I work on that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So I think the way we will move forward, I will revise after our meeting. I will revise the document. In this case here, I will accept your suggestions, and then Hannah and Richard, you can work again on that version, but probably wait until you get the new version of this report, so that we don't work on the same report at the same time.
Okay.
Thank you. And Thomas?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I really like this paragraph. I think it's well written and it kind of captures what we discussed. One thought I had was, since this really talks about the data that still need to be collected and the process that should be used to arrive at these iterative targets, maybe Hannah and Richard, you can consider moving this into question 1C, which is about the additional data and additional research that's needed to get to targets. Whereas question 1A is about, do we have or do we not have enough data to set targets and limits? That would be a suggestion.
I will write that down because I got to think about that one too.
I think it fits here, but it could probably be referred to again under 1C.
Yeah, I remember referring to this section somewhere farther down the line, but I forget exactly where. Hopefully it's in 1C, but when we get down there, we'll see. But thank you, Thomas. That's good.
And then that list of bullets that I read out earlier, would it make sense to put it into 1A and take it out of that chapter 6? To me, it's like it's a very specific recommendation. Can we put it in 1A? That would be my proposal, to actually take it out of chapter 6 and actually put it into this section 1A as a specific recommendation, maybe under that paragraph 9 on transparency, or as part of that paragraph 9 on transparency.
I think it would fit there.
Are you talking about the percentiles and then like and
Yeah,
applied?
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah,
So why don't you grab that? I'll take that out of the chapter 6 and let you put it into
Okay.
that question 9.
Okay.
Just that paragraph with the subsequent list and not a paragraph below it.
Yeah.
I think it probably, or should it be moved or just referred to? Because
I think
it's
it should
really
be
about
moved because
SWOT
it's a
model, so
specific
it kind of,
recommendation.
wouldn't it be missing in chapter 6 if it weren't there anymore?
I can refer to it. I'd like to do it the other way around. Put it into 1A and then maybe refer to it in chapter 6. Because that's a specific recommendation.
Yeah. It sounds like we have agreement on that.
Okay, I made a note.
Can I ask a process question? I'm
Uh-huh,
just
yes,
a little
Hannah.
confused. Okay, so 2 questions. Because some of my edits and comments weren't transferred over, should I wait to get a draft? Should I wait to get a new draft from you, Daniel, incorporate the comments I made last time if they're still relevant, and then send back?
I think that's probably would be the best solution. Yes, sorry for having to do it twice.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, I think I'll try to incorporate as much as possible from our discussion today, and so then we have a cleaner version to work on for next, or to make comments for next time.
Okay.
If I may, I do apologize. I know that just in the interest of transparency, we're making sure to display any comments received in public forums like this one. If it's okay with the group, Hannah, maybe I can just pull up your version, your original version, and display those right here, and you can walk through them, just to cut down on email traffic and back and forth, if that's okay. Let me know.
Yeah, it's just like certain wordsmithing stuff and like, in point 1 under 1A that I did, just like little things like that I'm thinking about. Yeah.
So if there's anything you want to walk through right here, this is from your original version.
Yeah, it feels like it would take up unnecessary time right now.
Yeah.
And then my other question is because Ngodo and I are working on the research section, am I allowed, should Richard just work on question one on his own, or?
Oh yeah, I guess that would be a requirement, yes.
Richard, are you okay with that?
Oh, I thought I could work with you on question one, but not on the research question. But you could work with Godo on that. So now I'm confused. I'm
Yeah,
not
that's
sure how this thing works sometimes. I'm sorry. Should know by now, but I don't.
No, it's too confusing. And
Yeah, I mean,
So do we have somebody from Erica from the water board? Are you here? Can you answer this question?
Erica will be joining at 4:30. She's pulled in another meeting, but I'd look to Annalisa, Karen, anybody at the water board, if you can answer that process question. And if not, we'll get you an answer as soon as possible.
Yeah, if you could repeat the process question, just in case any of us missed it.
yeah, so Ngodo and I are working on section 5 point, I don't know what it's going to be, 1 or 2, research. And there's changes to question 1 that are needing to be made that, originally I was working with Richard on, but now I should not work on, I can't work with them both, right?
That's correct. Each public meeting where we're having these conversations, as I understood the answer last week, and I will admit, I am not an attorney. And so in some instances, I'm equally as confused as you are. But as I understood the answer last week, each week, the pairings can be reset. Oh, Eric is here. Eric, please save me from myself.
He may not be able to turn his microphone on.
Is he a host? Is he?
Yes, he should be able to. Mute and unmute. Question for Eric Gilman from the State Water Board regarding process for revising the document.
Good. Sorry, just trying to figure out.
Understood.
I think while we're waiting for Eric, I will say, I think, Aaron, you are on the right track in terms of what constitutes quorums and the way that we had originally did the pairings. So my understanding, Hannah, is that you had a separate pairing for one of the questions.
Mm-hmm.
It was reset, and then you were working with a different panel member now to update another one of the questions. And what you're asking is, can you, and is this, I guess the question is if you want to reset and then work on the same question with the panel member that you were originally working on for that specific question, question number 1, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm wondering if I can work with Richard on question 1 and Ngodo on section 5, the research highlights.
The question is from today until the next meeting.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, maybe what we can do is offline while you continue your discussion, we can follow up with Eric to ensure, and I wonder if it's
We have an answer from
specific.
Eric. Or, well, I don't know whose this chat is, but the answer from last week was that ideally we don't have crossover between pairings. However, you can do it so long as you don't talk to each other about the other discussions you're having with your other pair. So Hannah, in your instance, in working with Ngodo, you wouldn't be able to talk about the work that you're doing paired with Richard.
Okay.
I think the research section and question 1 are sufficiently different that you can ensure not to touch on the other with any of them. So thank you, Karen.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to derail us from the.
Oh no, your confusion is well founded.
Ali, you have a comment?
No, just about this question Karen addressed, but what we heard from Erika, I think we worked with Thomas on question 9 and 5, but when I started working with Richard on the best management practices, she asked us to stop working with Thomas. So that's why we didn't work last week with Thomas. So he did all those modifications, and I worked with Richard. Just the experience.
I guess that's the safe the safe way to do it. Well, Thomas.
Yeah, unless if this is clarified, I was going to bring up another point, and I was going to move to just up one paragraph to number 5 and ask whether, I mean, of all of the answers in this 1A response, this would be the closest to actually saying there should be a limit. If you, Sam, if you can scroll up and get to 5, just a few lines up. This would be the closest. So this is the part that we discussed in December about, you know, does it make sense to say, yes, there should be a limit at the 75th or 80th or 90th percentile. And I just wanted to go back to this and ask whether this is worded strongly enough to reflect our joint sense that, yes, it makes totally sense to say, to set a limit on any one of these metrics, whichever would be the most useful, and they will be highly correlated, regardless of which one is chosen, and say, you know, the people that are in the top 20% or in the top 10% should be given a limit? Or do we need to word it more strongly that this is really where we think a limit can indeed be introduced?
Richard, you like to answer to this Thomas suggestion?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. In my mind, it's basically saying, I mean, it's really up to the regional board. I would probably want to put in there, but, well, I did put in there, or somebody put it in there. But that is exactly what we're suggesting. For this current, the current situation. And that's an initial step. That probably needs to be clarified too. But yeah, that's kind of what I had in mind when we were writing this. And I don't know if you have other thoughts, but how would you make it stronger, Thomas?
What I would suggest is the second sentence. So we agree there's a point at which an applications may be excessive. I would then say, we recommend that regional water quality control boards consider to set a limit on growers that currently are in the highest 80th or 90th percentile of either A-R, A over R, or A or equivalent metrics. And be very specific. The way it reads, like it says, they may decide to do this, and rather than that we state they may decide to do this, we say we recommend that they consider this.
Okay, great. I'm writing that down.
And I think what I hear us say is we recommend that there be a limit set at the 80th or 90th percentile, and we leave it to the regional water boards whether it should be the 80th or the 90th, and whether it should be A-R, A over R, or A, or equivalent.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I agree. It can be written more strongly. I wouldn't object to that.
Yeah, I think Richard and I had that sentiment in mind, and it's clearly not coming across, so we can work on that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Thomas. Gudu?
I think Thomas captured most of my comments. I had made a word change in addition to the one you see in red, where determined by regional water board. I also changed may be subject to should be subject to. So I think just in line with having stronger language there. But I do like Thomas's recommendation.
Ali?
I agree with Thomas on this. I think that sentence is vague now. We should go with very strong. But my point is here, do we want to go with the range 80 to 90 or go just directly to a number? For example, 85 to make sure, or just say based on the regional decision with the coalition, go with, because there is a vague, still if we go with 80 to 90%, that's a range. So which region goes with which or why? I think if you want to go with recommendation, we should be clear this here. Either mention, the region decide based on what, or go with this, with a specific percentage.
I think for me, either way works, but I think if we considered the 80th percentile, that means that it would affect only 1 in 5. So there's definitely, so I don't think that would be too strict to recommend the 80th and not the 90th. But that's my opinion, because there are still 4 out of 5 do a better job than those above the 80th. But Thomas, you have a answer to Ali's comment?
Yeah, not being a farmer, that would be my sense, say, that seems to be a reasonable proposal to go with the 80th percentile. But I would really like to lob that question to those of you that are on the farm on a regular basis. That to me, that is the crux of the question 1A. And it's really to the economic, those of you that work in the agricultural management sphere. I would love to hear from you and what you think.
Ali, did you raise your hand, or it's still up from before?
Yes, because
Okay, go
based
ahead.
on Thomas' proposal, if that's the case, because that's a very general recommendation with a number, I stand with 90% for the start point. Because region by region is different. And if you want to go with one number for all region, I think agronomically, I'm not confident to go down to 80% for the start point.
Richard, what is your take?
Well, I was just looking at the Region 3 numbers that Sarah Lopez presented, way back in the summer. And I guess my feeling would be I would leave it 80 to 90% and let the region decide, because it kind of depends on the this, like Thomas is kind of being sensitive about the grower, how many of the growers are able to, it may be that 90 is where it needs to be, but I guess I just feel uncomfortable kind of trying to make this decision. I would leave it up to the regional board. They would look at their situation and see what makes sense, and I would trust them to make the decision. I think that's where I come down on this question.
I think one reason to keep it open is that probably in areas where the conditions are very similar, you could have let's say, the 80th percent, or whoever is above the 80th percent, but in regions where you have very different soil types or irrigation systems, the 80th percent may catch some growers who do the best with the conditions they have, but still some of them may be up there. Guru?
I have a question for Ali. Ali, I'm wondering why you're not comfortable with it being down at 80th percentile.
Well, I think Danielle mentioned, because if you want to go with one general recommendation for the entire state, it might work for some crops for some regions, but not for the other region. For example, if you go with Coachella Valley with the totally sandy soils, so the story is different from Imperial Valley with the very heavy soils. So it doesn't work perhaps there, but it might work in some other places. So I think if you want to go with general, should be with 90. If you want to go with the region decision, perhaps 80 to 90 should work. That was my point.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. I think the language there, like of having 80 to 90, then determined by the regional water boards where they're able to make that decision will be helpful. And then that will vary per region, like depending on soil type in different regions.
Thank you. Richard?
Yeah, thank you all for the points you're making, because now I'm getting a little bit more clarity. I think the one thing that's been kind of bothering me, through this whole process is the issue of people on sandy soils. Like I think of the Salinas Valley, there's growers on some of the heavier soils, especially in the northern part of the valley. They're going to have an easier time with everything we've been talking about. The growers in the south, where it's warmer and they're on sandy soils, are going to struggle. And so even if they use, a lot of the BMPs, and so that's why I felt very strongly about having an evaluation period, because, I kind of wonder how well some of those growers are going to be able to achieve some of these targets. So I think, everything that you guys just laid out, I think helped me understand, the issue that I was having with this. I do worry about certain within a region, issues that come up, and certainly the sandy soils in warmer areas is going to be very challenging. So, yeah.
Thank you. I think Thomas, you raised your hand first.
Yeah, I think, Richard, that can be addressed by suggesting to, I think one important piece to me with this 80 or 90% piece is that it's not across all crops. It's really by crop, because what the A minus R or the A over R or the A is in one crop is very different from others. So it definitely has to be crop specific. And one way to address your issue is to say that regions may choose to also look at this by crop soil. So you have basically, you look at the distribution among folks that grow broccoli on sandy soils, and you look at the distribution among folks that grow broccoli on everything else. And you say within each of these groups, so within the broccoli grower group on sandy soils, those that are in the 80 plus percentile, they really need to get with their other colleagues in the broccoli on sandy soils, in terms of how they manage A minus R, or A over R, or A, or whatever else, whatever metric the boards are choosing for that. The other thing I was going to suggest is that this particular piece be added to the bold summary part at the top of 1C, of 1A, because that's to me a critical part of this question, of this answer 1A, is that in addition to the targets to be developed, that yes, there should be a limit at the 80 to 90 percentile. The other piece I was going to suggest on this number 5 is, so make it maybe, at least crop specific, but consider making it crop soil specific. But I think another piece to consider is that there are crops that are going to be so small in terms of how many there is in a particular region that it doesn't make sense to look at these percentiles at all. You know, if somebody grows tea or coffee, then they're probably the only ones in the entire region, and they automatically will be, you know, both the 80th and the 10th percentile. So what do you do with that? So there, I think it makes sense for regions to say, you know, if there's only 5 fields or 10 fields or 50 fields of one particular crop, then, well, 50 might be too large, but if there's only 10 of one particular crop, it doesn't make sense to set, you know, an 80th percentile because they're too small.
Yeah, that's a good point. But Ruth, you raise your hand.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, and I apologize. I've been driving, so I haven't been able to comment, but I've been listening the whole time. So I just got to my destination. And I just want to say I agree with Thomas's comments and the other comments that have been made about having more flexibility for different regions. And I think different crops, different soils makes a lot of sense. And I think especially the point about niche crops like coffee or tea or garlic chives or other, you know, lemongrass, other crops where there might not be that much acreage and there might not be that much variation in practices that those metrics might not make as much sense. So I think just given the diversity of crops in California and regions, climate, soils, it makes sense to have more flexibility for this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe to add to that, you know, if from my perspective, sort of from the groundwater perspective, if you can work on 90% of the land area with, you know, the crops that cover 90%. So if it's the top 15 crops that get to 90% of the land area or the top 20 crops that get to 90% of the land area, and you set crop soil specific limits on those on that 80th percentile, then we're already much better off than we are right now.
Definitely,
yeah, 100%.
So what do others think? Go with 80th percentile, but specifically mention it's crop and soil specific, or can be considered on depending on soil type or by soil type. Richard?
Oh, is that what you heard?
Yes.
Oh.
Okay. Or what will be your solution?
Well, no, I mean, I totally agree with what Thomas said, and it should be, you know, tied. Well, in our area, we don't really talk about crops because we're double cropping, so
or system, yes.
That kind of mucks this up a little bit, but I do like the idea of tying it, you know, making some wording in there to the soil type. But I do still like the idea of having that flexibility and letting the regional board decide.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Hannah?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I really like this soil by crop or cropping system type, and looking at the percentiles, and then maybe, you know, I don't know if people would feel comfortable sort of having a hard stop at 90. So, you know, that the regional boards can't, or regional boards can't set it to like 95th percentile because at some point it just gets to be irrelevant. So I think having like a hard stop at 90 makes sense.
But if you keep it the way it is, it says 80th or 90th. So it just gives these two options basically. Mm-hmm. Ali?
So I think good comments from our colleagues. If you want to add, you know, add both, not just soil alone. I think both, you know, sometime just in one region, even with the same soil type, a crop makes a significant difference, sometimes 2 times more nitrogen application for the crop, just because of the crop, not the soil differences. I think both are important if you want to add just both together, not just one.
Yes, I think
didn't
that the
understand what
idea,
you're
it's
saying,
not, sorry, Thomas.
I didn't understand what Ali was saying. Are you saying you're recommending to do crop and soil and not just soil?
Yes, both together. You know,
Oh, yeah. I was not
I agree
yeah.
with you. Yeah, I agree. You know,
Crop
just
has to be in there.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. And then,
sometimes, yeah,
you know, soil can be just two classes. Really, you know,
exactly.
coarse soil and fine soil. That's totally
Exactly.
fine.
Exactly.
It shouldn't be complicated. And then for the crops, I would just use the top 20, you know, the crops that cover the 90% of the land, whether that's 2 crops or 10 crops or 20, but you know, don't fuss with all the crops. It just gets too complicated.
Mm-hmm. I
The
think
other
the
piece,
original idea was to have crop here, but it's not specifically mentioned. So I think it should be included here, or by crop or cropping system, so that it also applies to the Central Coast, where it's not just one crop. But yeah, I think it's good to add it. The original idea, as far as I understood it, was it should be crop specific. But you're right, Ali, it's not mentioned here, so definitely include that. Do you
so
agree,
then I'm going to
Richard,
raise,
when you wrote this, that you were thinking about crop-specific percentiles?
Who were you asking, Daniel?
When you wrote this section, did you think about crop or cropping system specific percentiles, not mix everything together? Fine-grained vegetables, for example.
Yeah, I mean, usually I write it from a Region 3 perspective, so I probably wasn't thinking about specific crops. I don't know, Hannah, if what you were thinking, but that was where I was coming from. But I think it's good though to get this feedback so we can open it up to the whole
I think
state.
originally we left it a little vague because of those differences between regions. So either crop or cropping system was the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that makes sense. So I'm going to bring up another like dorky science aspect of this that I think we should be specific on. Is this going to be a percentile across the number of growers? So if there's 100 growers growing broccoli on sand, are we going to say that the 20 worst should be falling into the limit? Or are we saying we're going to look at this on an area basis? And we're going to take the growers in 20% of the area in terms of the worst A over R or A minus R or A, and all those are going to fall into the limit. That's an important distinction because if we do it by grower, there's probably, if we do it, you know, among the 100 growers, there's going to be some that have most of the land, at least in the Central Valley, and then there's going to be a lot that have small pieces of land. I don't know where they or how they rank, but I would imagine that if we do it by area, it would affect a lot more smaller growers potentially than if you do it by grower. But from my perspective as the groundwater, sort of my groundwater perspective, I would like to do it by area. If we can get, you know, the 20% worst area to be as good as the other 80% of the area in terms of the metric that relates to nitrogen discharge, that would be really important. If the 20% growers or the 20 of the 100 broccoli growers that are sort of in that worst part only cover 1% of the broccoli on sand area, then we haven't really gained anything. So my proposal would be to make it by area, but I want to be cognizant of the fact that that could be well over 20% of the growers that are going to be impacted by that. But it could also be just one grower because that one grower happens to have all the land and he or she might be the one with the worst metric.
Ruth, do you have a comment about that?
Yeah, I was actually thinking more of the second scenario that Thomas just proposed of like, you know, fewer farms with larger acreages actually being affected more, that also that might have a greater impact on water quality than many smaller growers being in that 20th or the, the over 80th percentile. That's an interesting question. I wonder, Thomas, can you explain more? Why do you think the smaller growers would be more affected if it's per grower, or no, if it's per acres, or per area? Because I was sort of assuming if it's by area that would really focus more on larger farms.
Yeah, it would be actually a question back to you and Ali and Richard, and perhaps Hannah. Do you see, when you look at the Central Coast or the Central Valley data, do you see the sort of that worst A minus R or the worst A over R mostly to be the smaller growers or mostly to be the larger growers? Or is it kind of mixed and doesn't really matter? And either way, we're going to end up covering about 20% of the area and 20% of the growers. I don't have a sense for that. I just wanted to point it out. If we set it by area, that would make the most sense, because that's where we gain possibly maybe we don't. Maybe if we do 20% by growers, we actually gain a lot more area. I don't know. Right. Yeah, now that I think about this some more, yeah, I'm actually taking back my initial proposition.
Both is possible.
It could go
it
either
really
way,
depends on
right?
the
I mean,
distribution. We don't know. And it may be for some crop, maybe the one, and for other crops, the other. We really don't know.
We could look into the data and take a look and then come back on this. Maybe I think we should be able to do this with the tools. I can look into that and get back by next week on what that would be. But I mean, I think more regardless, maybe this is a question that the boards may want to, should be up to the boards, whether it should be by area or by grower. But it should be at least 20% of the area is what I would say. And if you do it by 20% of growers and it's more than 20% of the area, I think that makes also sense.
We could write it at least.
That would be a twist. Yeah, at least 20% of the area and at least 20%. Yeah,
yes.
Whichever is greater. 20% of the area or 20% of the growers, whichever is greater.
Ali, you had a comment?
Yes, one difficulty is I see here, maybe Richard has some experience from Central Coast, but Richard mentioned, in Central Coast, some part we have sandy, the other part or area, heavy soil. So how regional board can go for one crop in one area with 80%, the other area with 90%, with the same crop? I don't know how they can manage it. Or they already do management, something like that, Richard? For example,
actually, the idea is not to go 80% in one area, 90% in the other, have the same percentile, but divide the two groups and look at all the growers with the sandy soils and determine which are, let's say, above the 80th, and look at the growers with the heavier soils and determine which are above the 80th. So use the same percentile, but split them into two groups. I think that was the idea.
Yeah, the idea is good, but at the end, we want to give them a different threshold, right? In one region, in 2-3 different areas, they have different threshold. Okay, if the regional board can do it, I think it seems a little bit difficult, how to implement it. I don't know.
Richard, how do you feel? Can it be implemented on the Central Coast by region or by?
Yeah.
Is it even feasible?
I don't know. You guys are bringing up some stuff that's really interesting. I guess the way I kind of look at it from this perspective, it's like, we're looking. Let's say we're in the iterative process, right? And we're at the end of that iteration period, and and then we're doing the evaluation, right? And we're saying, okay, here's a bunch of growers that were able to meet this target. Let's say it's 300 pounds in the Central Coast. That'd be 300 pounds per year per ranch, right? And and here's a whole group of people that weren't able to meet it, and so they have to kind of think out why was that, and is it because of the soil type, or is it other reasons? They'd have to kind of think it through and decide, is it because of the just the situation they find themselves in with, but is there also technology that could be used, like more drip irrigation or better irrigation management, or whatever, more use of cover crops, to kind of meet that target. So I guess that's the way I'm looking at it. I can't quite figure out, like what you were saying, take the two groups and divide by two, and I don't have a good sense of how that would work here, because I'm not really sure how it would shake out.
Thank you. Ruth, you have a comment?
I think this is worth giving some further thought to, because it's an interesting problem, and it would be worth thinking about how to maximize the reduction in loading. I was just trying to think through like scenarios. So let's imagine in the Central Valley, there's a number of small scale diversified farms. Many of them are what I would call low input, where there's probably A might even be less than R because of economic constraints. However, there may be outliers in that group that are over, let's say there's like 5 of those growers that are over 80%, just theoretically, and they each have like 10 acres. If there's a category defined of small scale diversified farms on sandy soil, it would be good, just educationally and in a best management way, and also, for whatever the effects on water quality are, it would be good for those growers to reduce their nitrogen applications. But the overall effects in the basin or the township on water quality are going to be very, very small. So if I'm imagining if it was per grower, those growers could be in that 80th percentile where they have to bring it down, but you might also have a much larger farm that's like at the 75th percentile, that if they brought it down, the effect on water quality would be much more substantial. And so I just think that's one scenario, but there might be a lot of others that play out differently, and it's interesting to think through.
So we can definitely come back to this question next time again, so that we all have a little bit more time to think about it. But Ali, so Ali, do you have a comment, or
yes,
is it okay for the moment?
Sure, if we have time. I'm thinking, because the whole this process of adaptation of the percentage or reducing is a learning curve for our growers, and we should respect this. If that's the case, I think is reasonable to start with 90% as a general for the region. In that case, I think, of course, some growers they can go with a little bit lower than that, 80%, but let them to practice and see the responses, because growers in the heavy soil easily after 1 year they can understand from themselves, so they don't lose anything if they go with 90% from themselves and their practice, not us. But the 80%, in the sandy soil, perhaps even they should even see some reduction and agronomic issues, and I think is more reasonable to me to don't make it very complicated area to area in one region, make some complication, go with a high threshold, and maybe we can reduce the timeline instead of 3 to 5, maybe 2 years, I don't know. But let our growers learn from themselves, and that's a learning curve, I think, process. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we can come back to this point next time when we have a little bit more time to think about it. Are there other sections you feel strongly about or we can discuss today? Thomas?
Yeah, sorry for being a pest here. I was gonna, for Richard and Hannah, to consider also number, if I didn't already say this, number 4 in that number 1A could be also a piece that could go into the number 1C. That's about data collection. So not just 6, but also 4.
Just a quick question. So should Richard and I be making those changes, or Daniel, is that just something you can do? If we agree, like.
Yeah, I can move 4 and 6 to the response to question 1C, and then you can have a look at it in the next version of the final report and let us know whether it's okay with you.
Okay.
I'm just taking notes, so trying to figure out what.
Yeah.
And then we got some really good comments about sections 1 and 2, the overview, and I will just incorporate them all into the next version. And I think also for the sections 5 and 6, the research need, best management practices, modeling, I will just accept what you have written, and then we can continue working on that next time. But I will just accept all of that you have written there, and then we have a cleaner version. Hannah?
And once you get that clean version back to us, what I can do, I didn't delete any, well, I guess it wasn't, well, anyway, I didn't delete anything from like these highlights yet. Yeah, I can go back and kind of edit so that it's not so redundant.
Yeah, I think so. If possible, you could go back and have a look and decide whether you want to delete it or part of it, or whether you think it should remain in that section, still remain in that section, but then also in the compiled recommendations. Yeah.
Great. Okay.
You can just do it in track changes mode. If somebody disagrees, we can discuss it next time. Are there other sections?
I'm gonna put up a draft of this sentence in number 5 and put it in the chat here in a minute. Just to I'm trying to capture the discussion.
Okay, in the meantime, are there other sections? One thing, Mike and I are working together. One thing I thought, question 5 is about the summary reports, and I went back to the order, and I think in the additional comments it will make sense to include that so that everybody knows what these summary tables look like or what is recommended. Can you see what I'm sharing or still not?
We don't see.
Okay, so I will add it then to the next version, and you can comment it then. Yeah, it's really strange today. Things don't work.
Is there anything I can pull up on my end, Daniel?
Probably just show the final report.
Okay. Any particular section?
Does anybody have some comments about specific sections?
Do we want to just continue going through the questions?
We can start at the beginning, yeah, and just scroll through if there's no specific requests, but you're not sharing, Sam.
Right. So on to question 2, is that?
Or just from the beginning. Let's start at the beginning. We can put it to the front page. That would be great. Keep scrolling. Background, I think there was no comment here. Just scroll. No comment here either. And here, Thomas, you added a deposition, gaseous loss. I will add that probably below and mention that these are 2 terms we recommend including that aren't included yet or that weren't included in Ag Order 4, but they make sense to include them here.
I did not think of that section to be specific to Ag Order 4.0, but to be actually comprehensive in terms of terms to be considered in the nitrogen cycle. And so I think I would leave it here. My proposal would be to include it here, and then maybe in the next section where either in section 3 or where the Ag Order 4.0 is specifically mentioned to then say Ag Order 4.0 includes all these terms in chapter 1 except R gaseous loss and A deposition.
Yes, I can make that change. I mentioned it on line 160, 161, just a little bit above, that these are terms from Ag Order 4, but I can expand it to say that these are terms from Ag Order 4 or discussed later. If you could scroll up a little bit, Sam. Yes, 160, that's where I mentioned these are metrics proposed, but I can add that these are metrics from Ag Order 4 plus additional metrics that will be discussed later. That works. Sam, you can scroll down. Thank you, Ngudu, for this section here on nurseries. Scroll further. So here, these are comments on wording, I think mainly from Mike. I will just incorporate that and improve. Can scroll. now we're back to 5, and I'll just accept these suggestions, and then Richard, you can have a look at it and make sure it still captures the meaning.
I put in the chat, I put a suggested wording for that second sentence in 5.
Thank you.
And then it might need some further editing, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I can work on that, or Hannah and I can work on that. That what Thomas suggested. That's a thank you. That's a great help.
And maybe Ali, to your point about, this is going to take some time, and we really need to respect the fact that this is going to be a learning curve. What about setting it to the 80th percentile but for providing, a sufficient lead time to actually get there? It's, it doesn't have to happen in the first year.
Oh, you mean, for example, a timeline of 3 years or 5 years, something like that?
Yeah, say in 5 years, the 80th percent, everybody needs to be at the 80th percentile.
Should work. Even in a sandy soil, should work over time.
Yeah.
As Richard mentioned, there are a lot of practices, best management practices, growers can do and meet that, but it takes time.
Okay, then Sam, you can scroll down. What are the comments there by 8 and 9? Can you just show? No, this 8 that was moved to modeling section.
I believe you already addressed Michael and Godu's.
Yes. Add each region should develop their own data privacy and transparency models, but then come back to this question in under 5 where it is mentioned. Yes. Okay, then further, unless somebody has a comment, just chime in. It's a section Hannah may or may not move. And can you go to the right? What is the comment there, Sam? We can see it. Aha, yes. So I moved these sections to the modeling part 6. Thank you. Here, these are some wording changes from Richard.
I wonder whether that number 7 that we just scrolled over is something to put into 1C instead. So something to consider. Just to have all the data and research pieces in 1C.
Note, go to his comment. Suggestion to combine 7 with number 4 above.
And Thomas, you actually suggested moving 4, 6, and 7 all to C.
In
we can combine 7 and 4.
Sorry, I'm looking at something different. I'm looking at 7 under, no, I'm looking at 16 in question 1B.
We're not there yet. We're at 7 now.
Well,
you're further than I am. That's why. Sorry.
So which page are you, Thomas?
I'm on question 1. You're in response to question 3. I'm in response to question 1.
That's already 2. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Yeah. So in the answer to 1B, and I apologize, I'm behind the curve here. the last point in 1B, which is number 16.
So I did some rearranging in section 5. I actually included this under implementation. I think the section was called like research, outreach, and implementation. And so the funding for increased research, I actually put down there.
Which is
Sam,
great.
could
And I
we
think
scroll up a little bit more?
Yeah, just one.
So 16,
that number,
yes.
that number 16, I think it should still be in the answer and in it, but think about moving that to 1C instead. Because 1C specifically asks about additional data and additional research.
Yes. Have a look at it. I can move it around and then you all can see how it looks like. Sam, can you scroll down? No. So yeah, now we are in question 2. A little bit slower that we don't miss.
So we talk about the iterative process already in question 1A. I don't have any specific recommendations, but it might make sense to look at how we divide it up. The discussion of the iterative process, how we divide it up between question 1 and question 2. Question 2 is sort of about the iterative process, and question 1 is more generally about limits and targets, whether they can be set or not. And maybe part of question 1 can defer to question 2 or needs to be moved to question 2. And I don't have any specific recommendations, like I said, but that might be something to consider for Richard and Hannah. Who's working on 2? Is that also you, Richard and Hannah?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So just something to think about.
No, that's a good point. It's better than it was, and it still needs to be improved. Those questions.
And I totally realize that we're all in sort of a step-by-step process here.
Yeah. No, but thank you. That's a good point.
Okay, then can you scroll down, Sam? What do we have on the right? What are these comments?
These are the ones that we just discussed.
Yes, thank you. Okay, we can move on to 4. Question 3. Thanks for the summary. Then point 1. What is that comment about?
Certainly welcome.
I rearranged that section. So I moved the first line there to sort of your request, Daniel, for summary of recommendations. So it was just moved above, but it's the same language. I'm summarizing the response.
I see.
Maybe a number 2 on the question 3. For instance, region 5 uses a saltwater assessment tool to account for an input and output on irrigated lands. The data presented to the panel showed that region 5 has utilized the model on a township level to develop groundwater protection targets. Just a small edit. I would that should say, has utilized the model to develop groundwater protection targets on a township level. The point being that targets are developed at the township level. The model itself actually operates on a subfield basis.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Thomas. Targets. I'm making the changes on my end, and I can incorporate that to the new copy.
Okay, great. Thank you. Then here, question 5, point 5.
You can ignore that because I think it's really Central Coast focused. My apologies. I think we discussed
I also had the impression we don't need to mention it right here, but
No.
it will be mentioned.
Yep. So you can delete that if, yeah.
Any other comments or suggestions to the response to question 3?
Hannah and I moved some of the language, rather we have duplicated it in the research section. It's research, outreach, and implementation. Hopefully we get to that today. But some of the responses in the last, if you're able to scroll up some, where we talk about coefficients and where we talk about cover cropping, we move that down as well to that section 5. This is in question 3. Yeah, so 7 and 6 are duplicated in the section 5.
I think that's great, and you can go back and decide whether you want to duplicate it or whether you want to delete some of it. Sense. If it's still needed here, if you would like to keep it here, or if you want to delete it. But I think that's up to you and Hannah, but what makes most sense.
You like the scrolling?
Okay, yeah. Can you scroll down to 4? That was my comment. Point 10, I moved that part, the last 2 sentences, to question 8. And then point 11, the second part, I moved the entire point 11 to the modeling section for Thomas, but I kept the first half of it. I thought it's good to have it here, but the second half only needs to be in the modeling section. That's how I did it. I had the impression deleting everything from question 4, something gets lost, but
yeah.
The second part in conjunction, I moved that, and I think we can delete it here in question 4. And then at the end, we refer to question 6. That I added that. Okay, then we get to question 5. And so I just rearranged a few things. Thomas and Ali, you can have a look at it and let me know if it doesn't make sense. Then
and I haven't written the summary yet. I need to do that.
Then at the second bullet point under approach 1, we need to delete that link because it's not going to be available to people who read the report in the future. But what I would like to add, and I'm not able to show you, is a section we can, under additional information at the bottom of this question, we can add. No, don't scroll, Sam. we can add where we actually paste the language from the order, so that people can see what this question actually refers to.
So we had originally that that whole language in at the top of that question, and where did it go?
So it's now, sorry, Sam, now you
Is it
can
a
scroll
footnote?
down. So scroll down a bit further. Further. Even more. 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 Yeah, so now we get there. Now a bit more down. Do you refer to this point 1, which was moved to the modeling section? Is that what you're referring to, Thomas?
No, it was not that one. Maybe it
Oh,
was in
I
question
didn't
9 where we
really
had an extensive, was it question 9 that had more of an extensive quote from the board?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, that was
9.
footnote 33.
Okay, so I'm sorry, then I'm confusing this.
Okay,
My
so
bad.
I will add it. We can have a look at it.
Yeah. So what did you want? What are you suggesting to add?
This question refers to the summary tables, but it is not explained what is actually what the San Joaquin water quality order suggests should be in these summary tables. It just said it's additional to what the expert panel recommended. And I think it would make sense to have that list of
I see what you're
in
saying.
these summary tables, so that people can see, that's what it refers to. Because it's somewhere on page 200 and something out of 300 in the order, so probably people are not going to look it up or find it easily.
Yeah, and I have that in chapter 6. I have it listed and I quoted it from somewhere else, and we could move it there. Let me take a note to add that list of things in the INMP summary table into the background section.
But actually, I have that
question
list
5.
already. I just haven't added it yet, so I can include it in the next version, and then you can have a look at it.
Please do. Yep,
And
please do.
I can show somehow. You won't see it when I try to share it.
Yeah.
But I have it in a separate document. And then when we go to the bottom of page 26, approach 2.
Sorry, page 26.
Yeah. Yes, here's a comment by Mike Kahn. Region 3 selected to focus their N reporting design on providing blah, blah, blah. And Mike mentioned this is not an accurate statement. Many of the discounts reflect actual soil processes. For example, organic fertilizer amendment discount factor reflect that all of the N in these organic materials does not become biologically available. So probably it's mainly the word incentives that may not be correct here. Richard, how would you see that?
No, I agree with what Mike said there. Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely not an incentive. It's just reflecting the reality.
Oh, so that's a good question. So if I need to rewrite this, let me sort of put it in a little bit maybe inaccurate, but just for getting to what what I think is going on. The en masse balance that is in Ag Order 4.0 is inaccurate. It does not estimate the leaching to groundwater because it doesn't include, because it has these discount factors for cover crops, for organic matter. They are not specific to the soil. They're not specific to a cropping system. And they're basically taken, they allow, and I thought that was sort of the gist of the discussion we had in December, that they're in there because it allows, it incentivizes growers to do cover crops. It incentivizes growers to use organic amendments, all to the end of reducing the amount of commercial fertilizer, mineral fertilizer being applied. And so I thought of that as, you know, it's the end balance is scientifically incorrect, so to speak, because it's not trying to estimate the actual leaching that goes to groundwater. It's really being used to give growers a direct signal to use these regenerative practices. Richard.
Yeah, I think that's not exactly well, it's not really, they're not being rewarded for using, regenerative practices. Those credits, so like the organic amendments. I mean, that's basically for. I mean, I kind of explained this in question 7, but they're to more precisely represent what actually becomes available during the cropping season from those amendments. And then and what I kind of laid out in question 7 is that there's the labile amount, that's what becomes available during the cropping season. And then that recalcitrant fraction that's always in all these organic materials, whether it's these amendments, organic fertilizers, or cover crops, that is something that then just kind of goes into the background organic matter, and so it's not really to reward them, because we're not trying to say, okay, conventional farmers, here, use these organic fertilizers. That's not the idea at all. It's to help the organic growers to not be penalized for that fraction of the organic fertilizer that never becomes available during the cropping season, and it just becomes part of the background amount of fertilizer or amount of nitrogen that's coming available at a very low amount over, always, the organic matter is always mineralizing a little bit. So that's really the idea. And then now on the cover crops, however, where you're that's a little different, because there you are rewarding a practice that's good, but you're doing it because it's transferring the nitrogen from this growing season to that growing season, like we talked about. But
right.
it's not really for, to from the water board's perspective, the fact that it helps the soil health that's a whole separate wonderful side benefit. But the actual reason is because it's giving you at least a more precise estimate of what kind of leaching that the cover crops are preventing. Does that all kind of make sense?
That latter part, I'll have to think through, but to the point of the, in the Ag Order 4.0, the compliance pathways 2 and 3 allow folks that have really high nitrate in their irrigation water to not have to count that in their balance, because if they did, they would not want to use that irrigation water. Yet the board really wants, for good reasons, them to use that irrigation water, even if it's really high in nitrate. In order to incentivize that, they basically allow them to disregard what's in the irrigation water. They use then differential limits for the pathways 1 versus 2 versus 1 and 3, but it to me that's an incentive. It's not really, it's built in to provide an incentive rather than to get an accurate estimate of what might be leaching to groundwater.
Yeah, the groundwater, the nitrate in the irrigation water, again, that's all, we hashed that all out in 7D. Yes, part of what you're saying is absolutely correct, but there's reasons. Well, I mean, I don't know if you want to hash that out now or when we get to 7D.
I mean, what would be helpful for me is if we don't call it an incentive, what do we call it?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think one of the problem is that you lump irrigation water, cover crops, and organic amendments together, and they are really different cases. Cover crops is half incentive, half determining what's actually happening. With organic amendments, just one addition, even in the Central Valley, growers only report the amount of nitrogen that becomes available. It's just on the Central Coast, there are clear guidelines how to calculate it, and in the Central Valley, they are left to figure it out on their own. But so that's not something specific to Region 3. The factors to determine how much nitrogen is available with compost and amendments, that's the same in the Central Valley. So I think the problem here is probably that the three things are lumped together, and they are really different cases, each of them. But in the case of organic amendments, not being penalized is probably the right way to say. Mm-hmm. And with cover crops, yeah, it is somewhat an incentive, but also to reflect the reality. Mm-hmm. With irrigation water, it's just the limit or limiting the input with irrigation water to 200 pounds. That's, again, not to penalize people and to make sure they are using that irrigation water and don't use other water.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. That you said it.
Probably Hannah, you have also raised your hand. You have a better.
No, I mean, I think uncoupling, yeah, all of the three management practices in one idea would be good, and maybe just saying that, they focused on creating partial nitrogen budgets where discount factors were based on empirical data derived, I think, a lot from Daniel's work. Isn't that right, Daniel?
Organic amendment, yes. Compost is a different source. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and even the credit that they're getting for cover crops are based on empirical, data and biologically relevant parameters like carbon to nitrogen ratio. So I wonder if it's just saying, they were focused on creating, partial nitrogen budgets that reflect empirical experiments relating to mineralization and cover crop uptake or something like that. And then having a separate sentence for the irrigation water, or combining cover crops and the irrigation water, because I agree that is an incentive.
Daniel, could I lean on you, since you're going to be the next one drafting on this before it gets sent out to us, could I lean on you to take a first whack at that last part of answer 1? in question 5 and address Michael's comment?
So that approach too, yes, I can do that.
That would be great. That would be super helpful for me.
Great. So Ruth has raised her hand, and I think after that, Sam will send us messages that we have to stop. But Ruth, please go ahead.
Well,
don't feel
maybe
pressured.
some of this
Take your time.
has already been said, so I'll keep it short. But I much agree that it's not providing incentives; it's avoiding disincentives. So that could be another way to phrase it, or avoiding unintended consequences when you have reporting that is created focused on synthetic fertilizers and then inorganic systems with lots of different types of sources of organic material that contains nitrogen, that all of those have different mineralization rates, and there's all these different biological processes going on in the soil, that it's much more complex. And so that you don't want to penalize those growers by fitting them into a system that's not designed for their farms. So that's it. I think, avoiding penalizing, avoiding disincentives, or avoiding unintended consequences would all be language that would make sense there.
Great, thank you. So, okay, I will work on the next version, incorporate as much as I can, leave the things I think that maybe we still need discussion, leave them out, but you should get a much cleaner version. We have our next meeting on Thursday. I'll try to get it done by Friday again, so that you can have a look at it and then again submit your additional comments to Sam. He can incorporate everything into the document, and then next time we'll just continue the discussion. Hopefully we'll share the comments so that we can structure the meeting a little bit better.
Do you want it to be just comments, or do you want it to be edits as well?
I think at this point, both. If you have an edit about a section, make these edits in track changes mode, or you can add a comment. Yes, either way works.
Right.
Okay, then Sam, thanks everybody for the discussion. And so, Sam, back to you.
Wonderful. Thank you all. And if you didn't receive the documents from me, please do let me know, just so we can get the email issues sorted out. I'm again very sorry that it came in so late. Before we transition over to a presentation from Stephanie Kortman from CSU Monterey Bay, I just wanted Erica at the Water Board to chime in a little bit on process, and we may have some follow-up to do as well. Erica?
Yeah, hi everybody. Apologies that I missed the discussion earlier. But I was just gonna reiterate sort of what we discussed last week about the pairing. And so I just I know there was a discussion about kind of one person being potentially in 2 pairs in 1 week. And we everybody knows, and that's why this is coming up as a question, that we're subject to Bagley-Keene. And our job at the water boards is to support you and navigate through that process. So even though it's possible that you could, in fact, do that, it presents sort of a potential for either an accidental meeting in series to occur, or the perception that a meeting in series occurs. And we're trying to help navigate and avoid even just the perception of that happening, which is why at last week's meeting we asked and request that you guys not find yourselves kind of paired up with one person in more than one pair during any given work week. So just sort of reiterating that. If it wasn't clear, and I apologize, and next week we'll come prepared with a slide, which may or may not be helpful at that point because you guys are almost done. But just wanting to say that for the question that came up for Hannah, and whether or not she could work in a group with Nguru or and Richard, perhaps for the time being, if Hannah, you could pick one person that you know you should be in that pair this week. And then we plan to touch base with Eric Gilman and find out how you could navigate and if it, if we can support the process of you being in 2 pairs this week because you guys are making so much progress and maybe you need that. So we will work with Eric, and then we would be able to get back to you with a specific set of guidance that would then allow you to engage in that second pair. But for now, you would know exactly who you definitely are working with. And then through this follow-up email, we would share with you whether or not it's we're able to support the process of you being in 2 pairs this week. But we definitely have to coordinate that closely with Eric, and it's not a guarantee that that will, that we would get a clear thumbs up for that.
Okay, gotcha.
Awesome, thank you. Sorry
Yeah.
about that. I know
No
it's
worries.
really tough, and so sorry that it's like that. But you guys are doing great. You guys are doing an amazing job with this.
Maybe Daniel and Richard and everyone on this panel, I mean, would it make sense for Richard to work on 1 and then for me and Ngodo to work on section 5 point whatever, and just to keep things moving along?
I think so, yeah, probably for this week, if you and Guru could work on section 5 and Richard work on some revisions for question 1, but we can come back then the following week and then Hannah and Richard could discuss it in more detail if necessary.
Yeah.
Would that work for
And
you,
in the
Richard,
meantime,
too?
we'll be sure to follow up with you guys if Eric can give us the type of clarity that we would need to provide you that opportunity. Okay,
And
thank
I
you
can
so
continue
much.
working on question 5, question 9, and chapter 6. Solo. I don't mind doing that, but if anybody wants to join me because they're actually available, I'm open to that as well.
Well, I will join you again because I finished with Richard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you all, and thank you for your continued flexibility on that. At this point, I'd like to introduce Stephanie Kortman from CSU Monterey Bay. Stephanie is joining us today to deliver you a presentation on nitrogen gaseous losses from specialty crops. Stephanie, welcome, and thanks for joining.
Hi, thank you. I appreciate this opportunity. I'm going to share my screen. Get this presentation going. Okay. A little slow on my end. Okay. So yeah, I'm presenting today on gaseous nitrogen losses from Central Coast Specialty Crop Systems, which I've been measuring in for over 15 years. Those are some pictures of some of the environments and methods that myself and an extensive team have been using to conduct these measurements. And really today, what I want to do is attempt to clarify the full gaseous nitrogen loss pathways, including N2, and what they imply for removed N in a nitrogen budget, and what's needed for a defensible emissions factor approach. So just some context here. I know a lot of us already know this. There's never 100% nitrogen use efficiency in any system. Globally, 30 to 70% of what is applied is actually taken up by crops, and the rest of it goes in multiple directions. And when it leaves the field as gas, we can close that mass balance with what is missing versus what we know is leached or retained in the crop and in the soil. If the regulatory framework is going to include a removed N term for gaseous losses, getting it right really affects the credibility and uncertainty around this estimate. So this slide is meant to briefly present some examples of other studies that have detailed other forms of gaseous nitrogen losses besides just nitrous oxide. So if we have a full pie, which I wish I had a diagram for a pie, but it doesn't exist because these data aren't well documented anywhere really in the world. There's some really difficult forms of measurements involved here, especially with N2. So we don't know what that pie looks like, and could only imagine, what those fractions are. But some studies have provided some estimates for what that could be in different systems, from 10% volatilized as ammonia to vegetable systems. That study was in China, but I think it detailed over 500 vegetable systems, and it has emissions factors for ammonia and NOx and nitrous oxide. Misses the N2 piece, but no one study that I found covers it all. And another study that shows the NOx and N2O emissions factors together as about 4% of vegetables, 4% in vegetables. But fertilizer source has a big impact on that number. And then finally, there was this kind of pivotal study that does include the N2 fraction along with NOx and N2O. That's in rice. We're not talking about rice for specialty crop systems, but 17% was the estimate there. So the takeaway from this is that there's no one number that we can draw from to understand what the extent of the pie of any of these other forms of gaseous N losses besides N2O could be. So limited data on the field scale, difficult to measure. We need more. I'm going to now talk about very briefly that, actually, save that. I was going to talk about my data, which I'll do in a second. So this next slide here is just meant to illustrate a little bit more about how N2 gas in particular, under certain conditions, can dominate the fraction of like the pie of nitrogen gas losses, but in others it could be ammonia. So management, the environment, soils are complex, we know that, so there's a lot of factors that go into whether one dominates versus the other. In this one field example by Takeda et al., with stable isotope tracing, the authors found the contribution of fertilizer N to nitrous oxide and N2 emissions accounted for 16 to 32% of the applied N. That's quite a lot. So keep that in mind as I move on to show you some examples of data that I've collected over the years. And ultimately, just want to say again that even if nitrous oxide is the most monitored and we have the most data for that, whether in this region or globally, there may be these other forms of gaseous nitrogen losses that dominate the mass balance, and not including them in nitrogen budget misrepresents the extent to which those gases could contribute to the removed side of the equation of A minus R. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the data that I have been working on. It's been a long time, since 2010, and this effort to present these data here for you all was really helpful because I'm engaged in writing a manuscript that I will submit that will include at least a decade of these data. It's a long story why they're not published, but I have a lot of it and I'm really eager to get it out. And this table is a brief representation of the different counties, crops, management types, and soil types that I have worked in. So this graph is a subset of data that I have collected that I've removed all identifying characteristics from except the crop type and the cumulative nitrous oxide emissions in pounds per acre and the total N applied. So the total N applied is the black dots. and the bars are the cumulative nitrous oxide emissions in pounds of N per acre. And the IDs on the bottom are just like enumerated crops. So broccoli 1 and broccoli 2, those two may have been measured side by side, different treatments. So they're unique data sets, whether side by side or different years and different sites. And this is meant to just give you a snapshot of how variable nitrous oxide emissions estimates can be across different cropping systems in the Central Coast. You can see that for the most part in the like kind of lettuces category, there isn't a lot of difference at this scale, at least. But then broccoli and cauliflower, the brassicas really dominate the extent of emissions as far as I've measured. So this graph is meant to represent the cumulative nitrous oxide emissions shown in comparison to the total nitrogen applied. And the takeaway message from this is that the R-square value, the fit, is actually quite good. And it reinforces that higher nitrogen applications, mineral nitrogen applications, are associated with higher nitrous oxide emissions. So these data are simplified even more from the previous representation, where GS is a grower standard practice, or when 30% is this one trial where we applied 30% more than grower standard practice. And then CM is crop managed. So growers who use crop managed to inform their nitrogen management. And you can see that there are some of the crop managed trials definitely had lower cumulative emissions, but that's also a message that I'll reinforce in a little bit. So this is actually one of the two slides I'm most excited to present, because when we think about the nitrogen budget in terms of what the ag order is trying to achieve, we have our inputs are applied and are removed, and then we get the total discharged N. And this is an actual example from a field trial that I participated with. And this chart was designed by my colleague, Cole Smith, so credit to him for putting that together. But what's missing from here is the gaseous N loss amount. So if we pay attention to the discharged N, at the bottom, we see that we have grower standard practices, compost, no compost, and crop manage, and none of them have hit below the 400 pounds of N discharged cap. But when we include just nitrous oxide emissions, which is potentially a small fraction of the total gaseous N loss pie, we see that, at least for the crop managed treatments, that was my timer, we do get below that 400 pounds of N target. So this is meant to illustrate the importance of including a measure of nitrogen gaseous losses in this N budget accounting process. So I've taken now another subset of data, just for simplicity of representation, different crops and the high and low values, the highest and lowest values, the mins and maxes, for the cumulative measured nitrous oxide emissions. And I present that with these estimated additional nitrogen gas losses based on emissions factors that were developed by Ma et al. So those factors were in terms of percent of nitrogen applied. But because we know that nitrogen gas emissions come from other sources than just the fertilizer nitrogen applied, I thought it was more fair to use the percent in terms of how it relates to the nitrous oxide data that I do have measurements for. So accounting for it that way, we see that ammonia, the highlighted in the orange outline column, accounts for up to 8 times, ammonia accounts for many times more emissions, or could count for many times more nitrogen losses than nitrous oxide. NOx about the same, almost the same, but it's really that total N gas loss that is estimated using these emissions factors that illustrates how much nitrogen could potentially be accounted for in that removed side of the equation, up to 8 times, over 8 times the nitrous oxide emissions. So including just nitrous oxide misses the opportunity to have a more robust accounting system. This just reinforces what I said. We need better understanding of the other forms of gaseous N losses, and without the full N budget, including N2, there's a major piece of this equation that's missing. Need an agreed upon N loss emissions factor. Sure, that would take time and effort, but that's where we need to go with this. So in summary, there's other forms of gaseous nitrogen besides nitrous oxide emissions that should be included in the nitrogen budget. Best evidence does suggest that N2 can dominate gaseous N losses, but we do not have good field data for that, especially in this region. There are a lot of factors that can control the extent of emissions and the forms of nitrogen gas losses. So it's complex. There's no one size fits all approach. And ultimately, for removed N to include gaseous N losses, we need defensible ranges supported by research. Those are my references, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Stephanie, so just a few minutes for questions from panel members. Any questions? Hannah, please.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. This is awesome to see. Is there a difference between, in your research, like, have you found a difference between organic and conventional in terms of the fraction?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I have seen some differences. When I was going through data for this presentation, I had included some of the organic data. I really wanted to present data that I had readily available nitrogen applied information for. There's other trials that I participated in earlier on in my career before I knew all the pieces that were crucial to document. So I have some mining to do, but I didn't have what I thought was a good representative sample of more than 2 different farm systems. So I decided not to include them. I have seen differences. There are some important considerations that I recognize need to be taken into consideration in that the nitrogen forms, that are applied are different. So the losses, the transformation processes are different too. So sometimes we don't see the extent of emissions as early on in the crop, and it happens later when more nitrogen is mineralized. But yeah, it's kind of another story that I'm working on, because I do have those data to include ultimately in a manuscript.
Thanks. We'll go to Daniel next, and then Richard.
Thanks a lot for your presentation. So when I looked at your table, it seemed that probably 80% of the total gaseous losses were ammonia. So basically, it seems we would have to focus on ammonia, but it was based on the ratio published by Ma. And do you have some background on that study? Is it a robust ratio based on the global data set, or was it a field trial, or how did they come up with that ratio of 6.9 or something? How confident are you that these ammonia losses are really 80% of all the gaseous losses?
Yeah, so that study was in China, and it did include, I believe it was like over 500, it was like a meta study, over 500 different trials. What I can say is that I do have ammonia data. One of the instruments that I used for measuring on multiple trials included that. measurement, and I have those data, but I have not summarized them. It could not get, I haven't summarized them to the extent of what I presented here. And this just made me all the more excited to do that, because I'm very interested in what fraction of the end gas pool that I've measured is ammonia. So stay tuned for that. I have that from strawberries, and I have it from a diverse multi-crop organic system.
Thank you.
Richard and then Ruth.
Thank you, Stephanie. That was very interesting to see a summary of all your work. I know you've been working hard out there all these years, so it's nice to see a summary. I guess the question I have, here we are with this expert panel trying to, come up with recommendations about, nitrogen loss, from farming systems. And, so the question I have is like, what if you were in our shoes, what would you be recommending? Because we are proposing that, that we have this gaseous loss be, in the A-R calculation. Is there, like some guideposts that we could use, to come up with numbers, or are we at that point where we can do that, or are we still far away from that?
Yeah, that's the question, right? And I definitely thought about that. If I were you all, what would I think about this, and what options would I consider? I think, of course, including anything is better than nothing, because we do know that there are end gas losses, and that can contribute significantly, or it can at least contribute meaningfully to the total end budget, what gets discharged at the end. And if I'm sure growers would be very interested in accounting for that, especially if it puts them below the target mark. So I think something's better than nothing, but I have lots of nitrous oxide data that can inform this, and as I work on it, I'm more than happy to share and supply that, if that's helpful. But for the other fractions of end gas losses, obviously research is needed, but that takes money and time, and that's not going to happen in time for the decisions that you all want to make for this next iteration of Ag Order. So if you want to include those other forms, looking into the literature, deciding if there are representative numbers that could apply with confidence to these systems, it's really complicated. And we all know that soil's super complicated, and nitrogen transformations depend on so many things. So I think being really clear and transparent about any numbers, any factors that are used, and uncertainty bounds is essential. And at the very least, including nitrous oxide as a loss.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, Ruth, and then last word from Thomas.
I'll make it really quick. I was just wondering if there's anything you could tell us about why cauliflower seems to have such higher numbers.
Yeah, there was a lot of nitrogen applied.
Okay.
It was the highest nitrogen applied of any of the crops that I showed. And as we were out in the field measuring, like the students who work with me and myself, we were constantly noticing that there were really high emissions. That system, almost all the systems were sprinkler to drip. It was also the second crop following lettuce, so there was a lot of residual nitrogen that was left in the soil, that gets mineralized and is available at some point, and I've definitely seen that come out in the data. But yeah, it's mostly that the amount was high that was applied.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, Thomas.
Yeah, great presentation, Stephanie, and I really appreciate you jumping on here and reminding us of the importance of these gaseous losses in the overall balance and not to ignore them. And I really appreciate these really, you doing these really difficult measurements on gaseous losses in a variety of systems. I've always been aware of this being an important part, and I stumble over it over and over again from a groundwater perspective, looking at what we're seeing in monitoring wells or domestic wells, and especially since they're sort of the first ones to see the nitrate that comes in. And there are places where what's in the groundwater seems to be far less than what we would expect just based on A-R. There's places where it's exactly what we expect from A-R also. I have two questions. The first question is whether you have looked or come across studies that have actually tried to estimate the gaseous losses by closing the mass balance on the gaseous losses rather than the groundwater losses, measuring groundwater emissions directly, and then closing on the gaseous loss rather than the other way around. We usually estimate the gaseous loss and then close the balance to get to a number on the nitrogen losses to groundwater. And I wonder whether you've seen any studies that have kind of done it the other way around. My second question is more along the lines of what Richard was asking. In the nitrogen study that we did in 2010 to 12, we, in sort of getting to an overall nitrogen mass balance for the Salinas Valley and Tulare Lake Basin, and then later in our FREP study for the Central Valley, we were aware of literature saying that the total gaseous losses are probably, unless you're on rice or in a very anoxic other anoxic environment, are probably going to be somewhere between 2 to 8%, maybe 10%, in rare cases more than that. And to give credit to the gaseous losses, we have consistently applied a discount factor, so to speak, of 10% on the total amount of nitrogen applied. So we add that atmospheric deposition to the fertilizer, to the organic N, and then on that total, we assume that 10% are gaseous losses. How close do you think are we to reality with that 10% number? And my understanding is that really the big part is the N2 and the ammonia. And your data seem to confirm that to the degree we're really looking at these gaseous losses to make sense of what may be going to groundwater, we still need to focus on ammonium and N2 emissions rather than N2O and NOx.
Okay, thank you for all that. To answer your first question, so if I understand it correctly, you're asking if I'm aware of studies that have looked at or measured or estimated essentially, well, it's not just denitrification, but gaseous N losses from groundwater or downstream systems?
No, the other way around. They've looked at how much nitrate they lost to groundwater. They have all the other pieces of the nitrogen balance. The only piece missing would be the gaseous loss, and therefore they could estimate the gaseous loss that way because they've measured the groundwater emission.
Yeah. I was involved in a study that attempted to do that using lysimeters, but it's really complicated. The results were really, really messy. We could not publish them. They actually showed that in one instance, more nitrogen was lost than was applied, and the numbers just didn't add up. So it was it's a difficult measurement to make as well. So I don't know of any. I've written it down though, so I'll keep my eye out for that. Definitely, because certainly, yeah, if you have those other pieces, you can have some measure of what the N gas loss is, and that would be helpful. But I know from other people, that's not my wheelhouse. The water losses, not water, nitrate loss, and leaching. But when I participated in that study, I learned very quickly how complicated that was. And I've learned from other researchers who have focused, their life effort on that it is difficult. So, yeah, but we're humans and capable of difficult things. So.
Yeah. So how about the 10% number? I mean,
yeah.
is that way out of the water? Is that way too low? Are there particular systems that we should really think about a higher number?
It seems low based on what I just presented to you all from other studies that have looked at other fractions of N gas loss. So there was that first graph that I showed that was just like a real basic, here, I'll show it again. I have to go into my share mode again, which I cannot seem to get to.
We can see it.
Yeah, it's just small, huh? It's all these Zoom windows in the way. So you see that, most of the, most of the results are pretty low, right? Like all of this, everything past cauliflower is pretty low. So in those systems though, is that low nitrous oxide, but high N2 because denitrification is going more to completion. A lot of the trials that I've participated in have included crop managed based nitrogen application and carbon amendments. So, how much of those low N2O, cumulative N2O studies are showing that imbalance? I don't know because I don't have the ability to measure N2, but it definitely brings to question how do we come up with one number? What is fair and what is not? I'm not ready to answer that, but I do think that 10% sounds low given the estimates that have come from other studies in other parts of the world. I know we have a unique system here in the Central Coast, but I don't know if it's so unique that 10% is a reasonable reflection.
So why are you saying it's low? Because I'm looking at this and if I read this graph right, the cauliflower has an N2O emission on the order of 20 pounds, which is little out of 500 applied. On the input side, if you have 500 going in and 20 is lost, that's almost less than the measurement error on how much goes in.
Right. Yeah, but that's
it's
just
a lot
one.
from it's a lot from a greenhouse gas perspective, but from a closing on the mass balance, that would be little. Why would you think that on these cropping systems that have anywhere from 100 on orchards to 400 or 500 on multi-crop systems, whether it's corn and grain or whether it's vegetables and lettuce, that more than 50 pounds, more than 10 to 50 pounds of N get lost, more than 10%.
Why do I think that? I mean, I just
is that I didn't see that in the data you showed. Maybe I didn't read that right.
Yeah, well, so right here, this is just N2O. But when we look at, those other studies that show, 11.64% EF for ammonia. So if nitrous oxide is 1.69 and that's 20, then that the ammonia is going to push it up past 50.
Yeah.
And I don't know though how well those apply to these systems. The ammonia piece I can provide some information for once I process those data like I have these, but it feels like a very uncertain estimate.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Stephanie. This is really helpful.
But I hate to cut the conversation short. I really appreciate you joining, Stephanie. If you wouldn't mind sending slides over just so that I can share them with the panelists, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
But we do at this point need to move on to public comment before we close out. Just a quick reminder, in the meeting notice, we do ask that people provide 48 hours notice if they would like to provide public comment. We'll go to individuals who were able to get in touch with staff to request public comment first, followed by, if time allows, any individuals who may be joining as members of the public and wish to provide comment. I would ask that everybody limits their comment to no more than 3 minutes. I'll give you reminders out and you'll hear a timer go off at the end of that 3-minute period. The first name that we have on our list today is Tess Dunham. Tess, please.
Hello, thank you for inviting me or for letting me make a couple of public comments today. Very interesting conversation. I had a couple of different comments I wanted to make, but I'm going to start with what I think is the most important based upon the length of the conversation you all had with respect to the discussion on the limits set at an 80, whether it's 80th or 90th percentile. I do want to make a couple of observations that I hope you think about, because apparently you're going to have more discussion on those. And I have to tell you, I have some concerns with the discussion and where you're suggesting. I mean, I understand why, and I understand the thought process behind it, but I think a couple of things I'd ask you to think about between now and the next meeting when you pick up that conversation. In setting that percentile limit, what time component are you looking at? Is that a rolling limit that changes, right? Does it change every year when new data and information is provided, or is it set once? And does it go back to when reporting in the Central Valley started back in 2019, or is it based upon the most recent reporting? A couple of thoughts to think about. What you're then doing is penalizing those areas like the Central Valley where the program has been more mature and where we have been making progress, and now all of a sudden that 80th percentile is found to be excessive when maybe it's not if you compare it to an A-R or what is agronomically feasible. By just going by a percentile, we're basically saying 10 to 20% of growers are always going to be out of compliance. And that's regardless if there might be, like in the Central Valley, if we have a groundwater protection target in a township and that township is meeting that target, a limit set at those percentiles would say there's still growers that are going to be found out of compliance, even though the groundwater protection target is being met. I think that's problematic. It also is an odd component in that, in the water quality permitting world, we don't normally set limits based upon a comparison of one to another, right? It'd be like saying a POTW is going to be out of compliance if the percentage of X pollutant in their effluent is above the 80th percentile of the same pollutant in other POTW effluents. I think that's problematic. I also would ask you to think about in the conversation you were having about the various metrics, whether it was A-R, A over R, and A. I have some major concerns with basing limits on an A, in particular if you're using a percentile. A has no relationship to potential impact on water quality. It doesn't factor in any of the N losses and loss pathways. For example, the conversation you just had on the gaseous losses. So just setting a limit based upon an applied, the amount of nitrogen applied, I think is highly problematic and is unrelated to potential groundwater quality impacts. I also, similarly to A-R, although A-R as a range can be set, as we have proposed in the Central Valley with a recent report, is based upon a range of literature values that people like you all have published that said we think this is feasible and a fair comparison of a percentile, but it's a set range. It's not a moving target based upon a percentile. I also would just ask, kind of going a little bit too early on to the amount of.
Move on to the next commenter.
All right, thank you. I'll save my others for later. Thank you.
All right. Next, we're joined by Melissa Fregoso. Melissa, I know you had some images that you wanted to share. I do have those queued up. Please.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Melissa, and I'm the Imperial Valley Irrigation's Lands Coalition Manager. I'd like to thank you all for your time and efforts on this panel, and the purpose of my comments today are to provide you with information on the groundwater requirements which pose a unique challenge in the Imperial Valley. I'm seeking your expert guidance on a resolution to our issue with these specific requirements, and at the very least, the opportunity to keep this topic open for panel discussion. Next. In order to contextualize the capacity in which we are providing these comments today, I want to provide a quick reminder and overview of the purpose of coalitions within the Irrigation Lands Regulatory Program. A crucial role is helping growers comply with regulatory requirements. The coalitions handle monitoring, reporting, education, and communication with regional boards. This allows the coalition to communicate directly to growers so regional board does not have to reach out to each one individually. Having a unified voice and a trusted bridge between growers and regulators has been highly valuable for compliance. Next, please. The coalition model improves overall compliance and participation. It is important to note efficiencies gained by implementing programs at a regional scale as site-specific and regionally appropriate regulation leads to better outcomes. All of these components allow for collaboration, feedback loops, and a long-term program success. Next, please. There are 9 regional boards under the state water umbrella. The regional board's responsibility to protect and enforce water quality on a regional level. California uses the regional approach due to its diverse geography, climate, growing, and water systems. This approach to balance between agriculture, industry, and environmental protection emphasizes the need for tailored basins. And with that, I also want to note the importance on regional focus and the uniqueness within each region. Next, please. While groundwater basins exist beneath the valley, they are non-potable and not used for municipal or domestic consumption, eliminating a key public health exposure pathway. Groundwater monitoring requirements are designed to protect human drinking water pathways in regions where groundwater is a potable source, and in this case, it lacks a nitrate to drinking water pathway. Given that groundwater monitoring and reporting does not provide added water quality protection in Imperial Valley, the purpose, benefit, and the value of groundwater requirements warrant reevaluation in this unique context. Next, please. This slide references the language directly from the Colorado River Basin Water Quality Control Plan, which includes clear exceptions that apply in Imperial Valley, including 1, high TDS levels, 2, naturally occurring contamination, and 3, insufficient yield for domestic supply. Next, please. I like to next point out just the coalition efforts to date regarding all the groundwater quality requirements. In December of 2023, the IVILC submitted a detailed exemption request supported by consultant-prepared groundwater trend monitoring and quality assurance plans per the order requirements. This process included data analysis, well identification and mapping, outreach to well owners, and technical evaluation. In July of 2023, Regional Board responded with comments to our plans, requesting additional efforts to be made to come up with a monitoring network. In response to the Regional Board's comments on our submitted plan between 2023 and 2024, there were additional meetings and communication that took place between the Coalition and Regional Board, which all agreed there were challenges to this. After a further evaluation by the consultant and Coalition, 10 wells were evaluated, and only 2 were ultimately suitable for monitoring. It was concluded that based on these findings, there is a significant information to justify a request for an exemption. A comprehensive groundwater and technical memorandum was submitted, including that Imperial Valley conditions are unique. However, despite these efforts, the exemption was denied solely because groundwater trend monitoring is deemed as statewide presidential requirement. Next.
Melissa, that you have a team of 3. We do need to move on to your next presenter, Paula Pengel.
Okay, could I just recap just the last one? I just have one more slide.
Okay, please be very brief. We do need to move on to the next speaker.
I just want to reinforce that with the collaboration and compliance efforts have been ongoing and sincere. The scientific and practical evidence has already been provided, and the existing policy suggests an alternative more appropriate path forward. I'd like to stress the importance of meaningful, practical, and regional relevant reporting. Given the existing policies that allow for exemptions in the coalition's extensive efforts to comply, IBILC is seeking expert guidance from the panel on how to move forward. At a minimum, this issue should remain open for further discussion, and panelists have emphasized the need for reporting requirements that are meaningful and socially accepted. When requirements don't align with local conditions or water quality objectives, participation and compliance suffer, ultimately undermining the effectiveness of the coalition model and region-specific approach.
Wonderful.
Thank you for
very
letting me finish.
Sure. Next, we'll go to Paula Pengel. Paula.
Good evening. Thank you so much for allowing us. I'll be quick. I'm Paula Pengel, President of Imperial County Farm Bureau, and our thanks and appreciation to all of you that are on this expert panel. We appreciate all of your time and dedication that all of you have been attending to these matters. I know it's been taking a lot of time because just us listening for these 3 hours when they come, I know you guys have been really doing a very good job. A couple of weeks ago, Dr. Ali Montazar, he did a great job reviewing question number 9, and that addressed growers whose nitrogen-related practices do not impact groundwater quality. And it has been documented that no groundwater is potable or usable in Imperial Valley, which is a very unique area within Region 7. We request that this expert panel keep this discussion open and help direct IVILC and the regional board to alternate reporting that is meaningful and practical. This is requested on the basis that there is no groundwater that is potable or usable in any manner in Imperial Valley agriculture or municipalities or any potable purpose, and the current requirements do not take into consideration the local water quality, as well as recognizing that monitoring and reporting does not and will not protect or improve groundwater quality within Imperial Valley. Nitrogen reporting is based on protecting potable aquifers. Since the data confirms that Imperial Valley has no usable groundwater and no pathway for nitrates to leach into drinking water, we request that the expert panel to provide guidance on alternate reporting that makes sense. If nitrogen reporting is for no tangible or achievable goal, then it serves no purpose. Again, we respectfully request the expert panel continues the discussion on this very unique area within Region 7, the Imperial Valley, that has no potable groundwater. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Next, we have Scott Emanuele. Scott.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Emanuele. I'm a farmer down here in the Imperial Valley. Appreciate your time. Melissa and Paula did a good job lining out what we are dealing with down here. From a grower's perspective, just like you guys to find some empathy today and understand the challenges we face in doing this. Like Paula mentioned, we don't have wells that serve any potable needs. Most of the wells that exist in the Imperial Valley are for geothermal or lithium purposes and serve other requirements. We have subsurface tile drainage that draws the water out to drainage that goes into the ag sump that we have. So a lot of issues here. The other thing on that I'd really like to point out is that we've really never, in the discussions with regional board, we've asked for the reasons why we're trend monitoring, and we haven't gotten, and they said we want to know a trend so that we can get you off and de-designate or other avenues. And so we've asked for kind of parameters, rubrics. So what do we need to do to achieve this? And it really hasn't been clear. So at the very least, it's very difficult to spend an inordinate amount of money to get these wells placed and do the trend monitoring without even an expectation of what we're trying to achieve. So at the very least, I would ask that you keep this, like Melissa, keep this open, keep discussing it, and please urge the regional board to give us an expectation and a path forward so that we can achieve de-designation, that we can achieve these greater levels, because we want our ground, all of our water. I have 5 kids. Great community. We want it to be pristine as well. We're stewards of our land, and I know you all understand that. We want the world to be a beautiful place, but we also need to have an understanding of what we need to achieve, so it's not a moving target. Because at the end, how much is enough? And the answer a lot of times from the state is just a little bit more. So we need to have a defined exit strategy, so how we can get through this. So I appreciate your time, appreciate your understanding. Hope you can put yourself in our shoes as you navigate, decision today. And thank you again.
Thank you. Our final speaker for the evening is Rachel Magos. Rachel.
Hi, Sam. I was just on there. Melissa spoke in my place because of my current situation, so appreciate that. Thanks for the opportunity, but they covered it.
Of course. Thank you. All right. That brings us to the end of comment. Let me just do a quick search. Would any additional members of the public like to provide comment? You can enter the queue by using the hand raise feature, and we have time for just a couple more. Again, the hand raise feature, you can find that by clicking on the reactions button at the bottom of your screen, and then click the hand raise icon. Okay. Seeing none at this time, quick reminder that the next expert panel work group meeting is scheduled for Thursday, January 29th at 3 p.m., following much the same format that we did today. With that, I will step back and go first to Chair Geisler for closing comments, and then Karen Mogus of the State Water Board. Daniel.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to thank everybody for their contributions and have a nice evening. See you next week.
Thanks, Daniel.
And I'll just echo the thank you and appreciate the great discussion yet again today and look forward to more next week.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.